This week's Parsha, Yisro, contains the grandest episode in history, the revelation at Mount Sinai, where God himself came down on the mountain and gave the Ten Commandments to his nation, the children of Israel. To have the opportunity to share my thoughts with you about this event is humbling, and I'm deeply grateful to God for giving me life and allowing me to be his partner in creation in this way. Right now, I'm in exile in the capital of Egypt, New York, and I've been here for the Exodus and also for Tu B'Shvat, Parshat B'Shalach and Tu B'Shvat, the New Year for trees. As you know, mankind is compared to trees, and I've been trying to reroot myself and my family in the holy and beautiful land of Israel for 5 years now. So to spend this time outside of Israel is a little disconcerting. May God grant that my trip is a success and I go home to the land I yearn for every moment, stronger and with more resources to continue my efforts. So, the Ten Commandments. On a personal level, I'm the last guy you would expect to be deeply religious and observant of the commandments of the Torah. I've hated rules my whole life. I've hated school and authority since kindergarten. When I walk into a school building, I get PTSD and feel as someone would feel going back to visit a prison that they spent many years in. And yet, the commandments of the Torah are different. I am deeply observant and connected to them. Why is this? It wasn't always this way. Although I always believed in God and the Torah, I had a period where I saw the commandments only as a burden, and God as this white-bearded accountant keeping count with a reward and punishment ledger. While I still accept the idea that there is an accounting and every deed is rewarded and punished, I no longer see God as only an accountant. But obviously, every good organization needs an accounting department to operate effectively. I now understand the true role that the rules of the Torah play. A good analogy would be hiking on a trail. Many trails have markings on rocks and trees for the hiker to know the path, so they don't veer off to the right or left and get lost. Do these hikers resent these guideposts? Of course not. They understand that if they veer off the path in the wilderness, they can get lost and possibly die of exposure, and any number of bad things might happen to them. So not only don't they resent these markings, they anxiously look for them to make sure they stay on the path. In much the same way, we live our daily life in the wilderness with no idea what the proper path is, the path to a happy and fulfilled life, to a meaningful life. And the Torah is there to guide us, to give us commandments and direction, so that we don't veer off and live in a way that results in unhappiness, anxiety, disconnection, and aimlessness. And so, I yearn for the direction that the Torah provides me, the commandments that it gives us, so that I can assure myself that I'm on the true path, the path to eternal happiness and fulfillment. But in what way do the Ten Commandments differ from every other commandment in the Torah? Why are they written in stone? Why were they given so dramatically through God's revelation? So some commentators say there is no significant difference between the Ten Commandments and the rest of the Torah. Without, God forbid, taking away from the importance of any single commandment or letter of the Torah, I think it's self-evident that there is some very special significance to these commandments. Nowadays, with what's going on with COVID and government actions related to this event, there's a lot of talk of natural law as opposed to man's law. Natural law is understood to mean that man has certain legal rights that exist in all places and all times, regardless of the specific man-made laws that are put in place in many instances, such as right now, all over the world, to control and strip one of his rights. These rights include human dignity, the right to control what goes into one's body, the right of equality, and other rights like this. The philosophical underpinning of natural law is the Bible and the statement that we are created in God's image. Because if there is no God and we are not created in God's image, then natural law would not dictate human dignity or equality at all. Quite the opposite, in fact. I see no evidence of animal dignity or equality in the jungle. There are also laws related to our physical reality, such as the laws of gravity, motion, thermodynamics, and others. Societies that disregard these physical laws will obviously not survive for long. I would like to connect these ideas of natural law and physical law to the Ten Commandments through understanding God's purpose of creating us and how the Torah came to fix the damage caused by Adam and Eve. God created us to give us the opportunity to become like him through emulating him in this world. We do this by living a moral and holy life as defined by the Torah. This makes us like God because God is holy. God created Adam and Eve and placed them in his garden to watch it and work it. The physical laws of the universe as we know them were not in effect at that time. Adam and Eve's physical makeup was clearly not what ours is currently. The world was more of a magical and openly spiritual place, where the connection between the physical and spiritual was open, where Adam heard God's voice clearly as if talking to a friend, where Adam was able to see from one end of the earth to the other. And then Adam and Eve sinned. This caused the very earth to fall to a more physical reality, and Adam and Eve to become what we would recognize as human. It has been the job of humanity since this event to return to this magical reality, where the physical and spiritual worlds are united and clearly visible for all to see. Adam's generations failed and resulted in the flood. Noah and his generations failed, and therefore Abraham came and created a new nation, a nation that by following the Torah would be able to bring the world back to this magical place. And the culmination of the creation of this nation was the revelation at Mount Sinai. This was the moment in time when the children of Israel became a nation and not just a family, and the moment when they obligated themselves to abide by the commandments of the Torah. This event was God's way of helping humanity get back to this pre-sin world, this magical and spiritual world where our very physical reality operated differently. The Ten Commandments function as the moral, natural law that is the philosophical underpinning that will bring us back to this pre-sin world. Because all of the Ten Commandments are required to get there, and all of the interpersonal commandments were actually violated either by Adam and Eve in their sin or by their children during that first day. Cain killed Hevel. Adam and Eve stole fruit from the tree of knowledge. Eve's interaction with the serpent, according to the Medrash, included adultery. The serpent was guilty of coveting Eve, and Adam blamed Eve, bearing false witness by not taking responsibility. And the first 5 commandments are clearly also moral natural law that is fundamental to our existence as moral people created in the image of God. Because these are the principles that recognize God as our creator. The first 3 are about recognizing and venerating God as our Lord. Shabbos is about commemorating his creation of our world. And honoring our parents is about their partnership with God in the physical aspects of our individual creation. This is why the first set of 10 commandments were written by God himself in stone and were actually magical. They did not follow our physical laws. The Medrash says that the letters were free-floating. The letters that were carved into the stone were free-floating, not subject to gravity, and were visible in their right shape from both front and back, which is impossible in our physical world. And they were written in stone because stone is the fundamental physical substance of our world, meaning that the 10 Commandments were the embodiment, the physical embodiment of the pre-sin physical reality, and following them was the path back to this magical reality. There's so much more to say on this topic, such as the significance of the second set of tablets being written by Moshe Rabbeinu and them not having this magical aspect. With God's help, this will be discussed in that upcoming Parsha because this is already too long. I want to end with the recognition that our world is clearly coming back to these fundamental ideas. There is renewed focus on natural law, and people all over the world are waking up to God and his purpose in creating a world that follows moral principles. And now living these moral principles actually affects the physical reality around us. Modern science has already found that our physical reality is primarily determined by our focus, our thoughts, and our consciousness. I want to bless all of us that we play our part in bringing our world back to its pre-sin reality through living our own lives with this moral focus and with the intention of bringing Mashiach soon in our days. My heart and soul wish you Shabbat Shalom from Renana, Israel, and the rest of my physical being wishes you Shabbat Shalom from New York and worse, New Jersey.